Is up, everybody? It's a sad day in the Vish Kumaran show. You know who I am. You know what this is. We're reacting, a few hours after to the 49ers loss in the NFC Championship game, 31-7 to the Philadelphia Eagles. I wanted to do this show right after the game, and then after the game, I just didn't have the heart to do it. It was not just disappointing to watch the game, from the fan perspective. I think all of us were disappointed that the 49ers lost. It's just that I felt like we never got the opportunity to watch this game play out. I thought these were two generational teams in the NFC. I really did. I thought both of these teams, when you look at their rosters top to bottom, and how gifted they were at both lines of scrimmages, how well coached both these teams were, how good they were in terms of the talent. I felt like these two teams could have won the NFC any of the last 10 years. You could argue that these two teams were better than any of those teams, both these teams. And I felt like not only that, in a really, really weak NFC this year, where both these teams were pretty much stomping on everybody they played because nobody could challenge them, we were going to see these two heavyweights finally collide. And three plays into the game, 3 offensive plays into the game, Brock Purdy goes down. And that was really what the disappointment was for me. It was not just the 49ers loss. It was that as a football fan, I didn't get to see this play out, and that was really disappointing. I thought both of these teams were going to put so much stress on each other, challenge each other in so many different ways, both schematically and then in terms of the talent they have on both lines of scrimmages. And the moment Purdy went out, the game was over, right? The 49ers defense in a lot of ways put up a valiant effort, had some poor luck with some penalties, some also self-inflicted errors with a few penalties. But they really competed. They were put in a couple of bad situations, sudden change due to turnovers. But again, it was just a game that we couldn't evaluate because when Brock Purdy played quarterback, obviously after his injury, he had, no opportunity to throw the ball. His elbow was injured, and we're going to continue to talk about it, right? Because there's a bunch of future topics we'll hit on. But then you go beyond that. This game was just beyond Josh Johnson's league, right? Josh Johnson has been in the NFL a long time. I'm not going to sit here and disrespect him. He went out there, competed. He got hurt in this game too, so hopefully he gets better. But this was just not a situation that you want him playing, right? He's a great backup. He's a great guy who's been around so many teams, so many offenses, consummate professional, all those things. But there's a reason he's also played on so many teams. He's just not the kind of guy you want playing for you in the NFC Championship game. And I think maybe if there was one disappointment I would say with Josh Johnson, it felt like even the little things that you thought the veteran quarterback would have down were not down, right? They weren't getting in and out of the huddle really clean. They were having issues getting the ball snapped, right? 3 delay of game penalties with Josh Johnson under center. I thought Josh Johnson might add some run game element or some sort of movement. Not that Purdy doesn't add that. I thought he would add something that wasn't really there at all with him either. And then he looked scared. He just looked out of place, out of pocket. The fumble was awful. I mean, the most rudimentary thing a quarterback has to do is catch the snap, and that snap hit him right between the 1-7, and you got to catch it. And he didn't do that either. And I don't want to linger on him either because it's not fair to sit here and criticize him. It's really not. He's a 4th-string quarterback. But it's just that somber tone I have about the game. It's really that. It's just that I didn't get to see both these teams compete. And as a football fan, I felt like we really missed out on what could have been an all-time great championship weekend. I know the officiating in both games was pretty disappointing. I don't know if it really altered the result in either game. I thought in both games, different variables were really what altered the result, not necessarily the officiating, but it was pretty brutal to watch some of the stuff that went on this weekend. But ultimately, congrats to the Eagles, congrats to the Chiefs, and we're going to be talking about the Niners for the next 30, 35 minutes, talking this through, talking about the quarterback situation for next year, talking about the defense, maybe discussing a few key free agents, what they're going to do. But I'm having difficulty stomaching this game. Again, not even as a 49ers fan because they lost. I've been through this before, I feel like, right? All 6 times they've had a winning season in my lifetime. They've reached at least the NFC Championship game. And all 6 times I have had the ultimate disappointment and heartbreak. And I felt like this time I couldn't even experience the heartbreak or disappointment because I feel like the game was ripped away from the 49ers by the injury gods before it even started. I mean, Philadelphia had a nice drive, right? The Devontae Smith play, Shanahan could have challenged it, should have. They didn't get the right angle. They didn't know it was a catch. It was a great play. Either way, the Niners defense showed, even in that first drive, they had the plan, right? The plan was to keep Jalen Hurts in the pocket, make him go through his progressions and play the right way from the pocket. And they really did bottle him up. And outside of that one big run they had where he broke through and broke a couple of tackles, they bottled him up in the run game. The plan was great. They rushed their edges tighter. They kept him condensed in the pocket. They rushed 5 at times to not give him a lane to escape. When he escaped, they made him a passer and not a runner, and he's not a good passer outside of the pocket. They did all of these things well on defense. And you could see they had the plan. And we didn't get to see the game play out because, Haason Reddick made a hell of a play early in the game, got to Brock Purdy. They were in max protection trying to take a shot play. Tyler Kroft, sometimes, look, I understand that people say, well, it's not sound for Tyler Kroft to be blocking Haason Reddick. The way the Eagles front works and the way they sometimes get into that penny front with the 5-1, the 5-2 looks is that Haason Reddick ends up being so wide that if you put two players on that side, right, like they had it, I think they had 2 players on that side, it ends up being the tight end and the tackle have to exchange it. It's a good front for the Eagles. Maybe you say Shanahan should immediately take in a timeout. I could buy that, but if you're Shanahan, you're probably thinking, well, we've got the look we want in terms of coverage, and hey, if Kroft can hold up, Purdy gets this ball out, and maybe it works. Okay, it didn't work, but you don't expect Haason Reddick to pretty much injure Brock Purdy's UCL on that play. So I find it difficult to blame Shanahan. I know a lot of people will. In fact, I know once we start getting into the interactive part of my stream, it's going to be a lot of, Vish, you like Shanahan too much, you defend Shanahan too much. But either way, I just feel like, again, I just feel disappointed that watching that, I didn't get an opportunity to watch that game play out. I wanted to know which of these 2 teams was better. I really did. Maybe it was the Eagles. Maybe the Eagles would have won that game with Brock Purdy healthy. And maybe I'd be sitting here and telling you how sad I was that the 49ers lost. I'd rather be doing that than sitting here like this. This doesn't feel like the end of the season to me. This feels completely inconclusive. I don't know. I don't know what the 2022 49ers are. I had resolution and conclusion with the other seasons. I don't have a conclusion with this season. I feel like I never got the opportunity to see if this team was really good enough to win a Super Bowl. I didn't get it. And it sucks. Niner, not a bot. He's not a bot. Says, I think it was funny that the announcers were playing the underdog narrative for the Eagles while they were beating on a team with no QB at home. Yeah, Look, I know I'm quite critical of the announcing, and a lot of times it is tongue-in-cheek. A lot of times it's serious, especially when I'm talking about Daryl Johnston. But I understand the difficulty of the job for sure. It's not the easiest thing to do to be talking about the game live. I tried doing it in some aspect, and the reason I can even empathize with it further is I did a couple of playback games when that was going on with Akash and Rich Madrid and Jason Aponte, a few great people. And I realized then, obviously, I'm not anywhere near as prepared or talented to do it as the people who actually do it. So I'm not comparing myself. I'm just comparing the fact that I got to go through it and understand the difficulty. So I do understand the difficulty of the job, but I thought Greg Olsen and Kevin Burkhart was unbearable in this game. I mean, Greg Olsen at one point when Josh Johnson got hurt and the score is 21-7, saying that the future of this game rests on whether Josh Johnson is healthy. The Niners were struggling to move the ball half an inch with Josh Johnson. I mean, Christian McCaffrey had an all-time great playoff drive. Really, that's what it was. He had an all-time great playoff drive with an all-time great playoff run for the 49ers to score their own one and only touchdown of the game. It wasn't sustainable. The Eagles were really just stepping in on everything once they realized that the Niners couldn't throw the ball. There was no ability to get Brandon Ayuk involved because there was no ability for the forward pass. It kind of took Debo out of the game. I thought they missed Elijah Mitchell, something else maybe in the run game, but ultimately nothing was going to work without the quarterback. And yeah, I thought Greg Olsen and Kevin Burkhart were being pretty disingenuous on how they were talking about the game. Maybe Greg Olsen needed to sell this game as much as possible to keep the viewership up so he can prove to Fox that he should stay instead of Tom retiring. Well, we're going to talk about it further in the show, but I would think that maybe if Brock Purdy's elbow injury is something serious, maybe Tom Brady becomes a real option that we start talking about over the next couple of weeks for the 49ers instead of for Fox. I don't know. We'll talk about it over the next little bit, but thanks for the donation, Niner Not a Bot, and I completely agree. The announcers were pretty insufferable today. Heartless Xiao, appreciate the support as always. Says, felt like Jimmy in a boot would have outplayed Josh Johnson. Maybe. It's that pain tolerance. You don't know that. I think they did miss, obviously, having Garoppolo from a backup standpoint for sure in this game. I think a lot of things would have been better than Josh Johnson. It's just that Josh Johnson was the only thing available. When you're getting to Josh Johnson and you're in the NFC Championship game, how much hope can you have? It's unfortunate. And I know a lot of people are frustrated. And I understand what the frustration is, but instead of directing the frustration at people like players and coaches, which I feel like this was a little bit taken away from them, I think that frustration should be just more directed at, how unfair life can be at times. And again, my biggest frustration more than the loss, at some point I can come to terms with the loss. I feel like I can. This doesn't, when I was a kid, it used to be everything. When the Niners win, I would be the happiest kid ever going to school. I would wear my jersey to school, all of that. When the Niners lost, I would still wear my jersey to school, and I would hate going to lunch, and I would hate what people would say to me during lunch. And and that was everything. I guess now that I've gotten a little bit older, I've been a little bit more even keeled dealing with wins and losses. I do go through the ups and downs as a fan. But more or less, if they had lost today, with Brock Purdy playing the entire time, I feel like I would have been able to talk about the game and I would have had a lot to say. And I think that would have been kind of that. And it would have kind of put a bow in the Niners season. The fact that I just couldn't see this game play out as a football fan, as somebody who was very excited to see these two teams play against each other, as somebody who really looked at these two teams as the two best teams in terms of non-quarterback we've seen in a long time playing against each other. I was so disappointed that we didn't get to see them duke it out and see ultimately who the top dog is in the NFC. But congrats to Philly. They very well could have won a game where Brock Purdy didn't get injured. I just wish I could have seen that game. Scrolling through, Titus Mohler, as always, appreciate the support, the donation. He's a great guy who's always in here, so I always appreciate that. He says, I get the Eagles are great, but do you think they really showed that today? I just felt like penalties and injuries made it so they didn't have to. Yeah, I did think they showed it today. I think them beating the 49ers 31-7 did show it. Yes, penalties and injuries were a part of it, and that's why they beat the 49ers 31-7. But I think them not looking impressive is not the Eagles not being great. It tells you that they were playing another team that was also great. And that's where I feel like I've seen a lot of conversation where people are like, well, the Eagles are overrated or the Eagles are this. No. The Eagles are as good as we thought they were. The 49ers are also as good as we thought they were. This defense was every bit as good as we thought it was. This was as good as it gets. And it's unfortunate that we didn't get to see the game truly play out, right? Because it felt like a tight game, even though the Eagles won 31-7. And a lot of people are saying they're overrated from that standpoint. But really, it was close. It was 31-7, and it felt close because the 49ers are really good. The 49ers have so many good players on offense. The 49ers have so many good players on defense. And that's where, again, it's unfortunate, but the Eagles are every bit as good a football team as I thought they were. So impressive on both lines of scrimmages. I mean, you have that many good players on your defensive line. Mahomes is the best quarterback I've ever seen. And it'll be a fun Super Bowl to watch from that standpoint. But I like Philly a lot, actually, early, just because I feel like Philly's just too talented. I feel like, Philly's just too talented, man. If Mahomes is still, that ankle is still gimpy, it could be, remember when Brady played on a high ankle sprain in 2007 and Strahan Tuck and Matthias Kiwanuka and Osi Umenyiora and all those guys beat him up? Could be that for Mahomes. Could be that kind of Super Bowl. Fossey asks the $1,000,000 question. Vish, why don't you do shows with Grant anymore? So I feel like I addressed this once a show, but I always appreciate the fact that you guys keep asking it. So why don't I do shows with Grant anymore? It's no other reason other than it was time for me to move on to do shows here on my channel and grow myself. I think a lot of people look at the timing when a lot of different creators detach with Grant or Grant detached with them and all of that and assume certain things. I was in vacation during that time, actually. So when the Kinlaw stuff was going on, I was in India, spending time with my family, transitioning between college and working. I was handling stuff there. So I wasn't really here or worried about those things. I just don't go on with him because I feel like it's now my opportunity to forge my own path and, make a bang for my buck as well. But yeah, and then I feel like a lot of people take this personally, right? I get character assassinated, called a snake and stuff like that, maybe once a week on here. It's nothing personal. Like I talked to Grant last night for the first time in a while, but I still talked to him last night. Like I'm cool with Grant. Like I appreciate doing the show with him. But at the same time, it's also my turn to do a show, on my own channel. And yeah, like Mondays with Vish was a great show. It got a lot of views. It did a lot, but it's now an opportunity for me to be fresh and get my own content here. And, Grant's still killing it and he's doing his own stuff. He don't need me anyway. I see the views he's still getting. He's still the big dog in the yard. The rest of us are just trying to eat a little bit. But yeah, that's kind of the longest answer I've given on this. I'm hoping by saying this much, people will kind of let this go. But I mean, I've been on YouTube now for 4 months after not being on YouTube for a while. And it seems like that's your favorite topic more than the 49ers. So yeah, appreciate the donation and I appreciate the inquiry. Mondays with Vish was a great show. Grant's a great guy. He does his thing. He's the best creator in the business. I feel like I just saw him get how many views on him reviewing a Philly cheesesteak. So he's doing his thing no matter who's coming on with him. Glory says the Chiefs will put 50 on the Eagles. Interesting. So you think the Chiefs will put 50 on the Eagles? I don't believe that. I want to get into this matchup in different ways. I would like to do it during the week, though, when I get to study both of these teams a little bit more. I got to study the Eagles a bunch last week, which is pretty fun because I had to do not just to talk about it here and talk about it with Larry and there and all of that, but more because I also had to do I did a spot on Eagles XO with Fran Duffy. So I had to be very, very in tune and on point with everything I had to talk about. And so, yeah, they're an amazing football team. I'll obviously look at the Chiefs. We know what Mahomes is, but I don't know if I feel like the Eagles or they'll put 50 on the Eagles. That defense it's serious. Those pass rushers are legit. Yeah. So there's two ways this stream can kind of move forward. Either we can sit here, I can kind of interact with you guys, see what you have to say, and we can just kind of go through the loss and talk about it together. Or I could just, give my opinions on where I think Brock Purdy is going to go or how I think this season plays out, my thoughts on his injury, my thoughts on those kinds of things. But it sounds like you guys have other things you want to talk about. Niner Not a Bot says, why is Grant salty that you don't go on with him? I don't know if he's salty. Grant's never struck me as a salty guy. No, I don't know if he's salty. I guess you would have to ask him if he is salty. I never have gotten the impression that he's salty. No. Glory says Grant plays the heel. Vish is the voice of reason. Yeah, I don't know what I am. I think Grant definitely has his niche. He's not only contributing great coverage of the 49ers, he's also become kind of an influencer in his own right, as in terms of his social media, as referenced by the fact that he can now post a Philly cheesesteak video and get that many views. I'm still looking for my own niche and my own voice and just my own balance in doing this as well. I think, as a lot of you know, this isn't my profession. This isn't something I invest obviously as much time into, maybe as much as I should. I invest a lot of time into football, studying it, watching it, just because I enjoy it. But I'm still trying to fit in how I want to do this content. And as a lot of you have seen, it's been sloppy in a lot of ways. I know it's been sloppy. I rewatch a lot of these things, and I wish I could improve some of my delivery as a speaker and a creator. And I'm hoping to improve on that as this goes along. But I'm still, learning and figuring things out for myself. But yeah, he definitely has his niche. He's the king. He's the top dog in the yard. So we all know who he is and how good he is at what he does. Heartless Zhao, again, by the way, appreciate all the support, everybody. But he says, today felt like playing a chess game against a GM down a queen, or a poker game getting dealt bad hands and getting a bad beat when you do make a hand. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, this is basically, you get 7-2 offsuit in a game of poker, and it's the second to last hand. You want to go all in, right? You want to play the hand just because you want to play. You don't want to be the one folding on the second to last or last hand, especially when you're playing with the buddies, right? Not when you're playing in the serious table. When you're playing with the buddies, you got 7-2 offsuit. You feel like you can muck your way. You can maybe do something. Plus, if you do win off the 7-2 offsuit, how awesome would it be? But you're not winning off the 7-2 offsuit. It's just not happening. The chances are not happening. The Niners were a fighter, fighting with one arm tied behind their back. UFC reference, right? This was TJ Dillashaw without the steroids, walking in with the bum shoulder against Aljamain Sterling. That's what this fight was, right? When he dislocated his shoulder 3 seconds into the fight. Well, Brock Purdy getting hurt was basically that. It's unfortunate. And again, a lot of people want to assign blame a certain type of way. We can, and maybe we will. Maybe I'll go back and watch this game tomorrow, and I'll watch the film, and I'll feel like you guys are absolutely right. We need to assign blame, but I can't feel that way right now, 5 hours removed from the game, because I felt like the Niners their chance was completely taken away from them. Again, not a disrespectful thing to Josh Johnson, but this game was out of his league. There was no team that was going to walk into Philadelphia and beat that team with Josh Johnson under center. Maybe the Niners couldn't even have done it with Brock Purdy under center, but I would have liked to see it. For sure, I would have liked to see it. Haha says, tell us how we're going to fix the offense of mine. I think he means the offensive line. Yeah, so with the offensive line, it's funny. I've seen a lot of criticism of them. Yeah, they had, I guess, a quote-unquote rough game. This is a tough matchup for them. Philly's defensive line is one of the most special defensive lines I've seen ever. They had 4 guys with 10-plus sacks? How many guys are good on that defensive line? The size they have with their defensive tackles between Jordan Davis and Linval Joseph, and Ndamukong Suh still gets after it, and Fletcher Cox still kicks ass, and Javon Hargrave's a monster. That size in the interior. And then the speed rushers, right? Reddick's a star. Brandon Graham is, one of the great players, or great edge players of my lifetime for sure. He's an outstanding player and has been for so long. Josh Sweat is a terrific player. There's so many good players on this defensive line. They've kicked everybody's butt. And the Niners offensive line, actually, most of this season has played well. Today was not just about the offensive line. When you have Josh Johnson back there, it exacerbates the issue, right? He has poor pocket presence. He was feeling phantom pressure at times. He was not getting the ball out of his hands. They were not able to get any sort of rhythm where he was able to get the ball out of his hands in any sort of way. And so that put a greater onus on, the blocking and all of that. The Eagles defensive line had 70-plus sacks. If you thought this was a game where, the Niners offensive line was going to dominate or, hold their own, then I feel like you had the wrong impression of what this game was. But I feel like you're going to have the wrong impression going into every game, because just wait till the Super Bowl. The Chiefs' offensive line is excellent in the interior, right? It's kind of the opposite of the Niners' offensive. I guess not the exact opposite, but it's excellent in the interior. Humphrey, Tooney, and Trey Smith, great players, right? they're still going to have their hands full with Cox, Hargrave, Jordan Davis, Ndamukong Suh. They're gonna have their handful. But the two tackles are bad. They've struggled. Wiley and Orlando Brown, who for whatever reason didn't take the contract, which I don't know how he didn't take it. Now he made the Pro Bowl. I don't know how he made the Pro Bowl. He's had a very poor season. Reddick and them, Reddick, Graham, Sweat, these guys, they're going to have a lot of success against them. And we're going to come out of this game saying, oh, the Chiefs' offensive line stinks. And in some ways, you can maybe argue that it's league average-ish after being top five-ish last year. So that there's that change. But it's just because this Eagles rush is really that great. It is. And I hate doing it. I hate do we need to give credit to them? Whatever. Yeah, they're damn good. Does that mean that I think they're better than the 49ers? I'm not sure. Does that mean I think they would have beat the 49ers with a healthy Brock Purdy? I'm not sure. But again, I would have liked to have seen it. But that doesn't mean they're not damn good. They're very good. Batman29 says, which hurts more, the 2013 Super Bowl, the 2019 Super Bowl, last year's NFC Championship game, or today's game? So actually what hurts most for me, or what hurt the most, was the 2014 NFC Championship game. Michael Crabtree was my favorite player. I used to wear my Michael Crabtree jersey to school proudly in middle school. I wanted the Niners to draft Michael Crabtree so badly when I was a kid. And just seeing that ending, and then Richard Sherman yelling and calling Michael Crabtree a sorry and mediocre receiver at that time, it devastated 13-year-old me. Like, it sickened me. I was angry at Richard Sherman. Well, that emotion, those emotions are gone, but that was probably the most upset. I think, I don't remember when I was little. I think that's the one time I cried after a football game, when they lost that game. Like, I think that game just emotionally overwhelmed. Not even kid me, a teenager, I guess, at that time, because I think I was it's kind of pathetic. I cried at 13, but what are you gonna do? But today's game was a little bit different, just because I'm upset about today's game, not because of the result as much, just because of this inconclusive question I have in my head. And that's really what bothers me, right? I didn't get the answer on which of these two teams was better. And I thought these two teams was as good as it gets. I've been saying it. It's the top-notch heavyweight matchup. Like, they're both as good as it gets. And I wanted to see this game play out. I wanted to see both these teams, go at each other. And I felt like 3 plays into the game, it was over. We knew the result was a foregone conclusion. The Niners put up a mini fight. Then the Eagles had that very nice drive that was, marred with Niners penalties, and then marred with a couple of really good runs from the Eagles, though the Niners run defense showed out really in a lot of ways. 3.5 yards a carry for the Eagles, 148 yards, though they got out 48 attempts, which is fantastic. Good for them. But you can get out 48 attempts when the other team can't throw the ball or come back on you. Really helps on how you call plays. But either way, I just wanted to see this play out. I'm so upset that I didn't get to see these two teams, really ultimately settle who the best team in the NFC is. And it maybe is the Eagles still. I just would like to have seen Brock Purdy make it through that game and see the result. This cool Raptor guy, he's very happy by saying fly Eagles fly, talking smack about the 49ers. This is some pretty interesting stuff. Dude, I'm not gonna do this fan interaction with you. Go enjoy your night. Your team is going to the Super Bowl. If this is what enjoyment is to you, I'm not judging. I promise. It's a little weird though, but you enjoy it, man. It's your night. I hope that there's any other way you can enjoy it than sitting in my stream and talking to the air. Titus Mohler says, who would you like SF's QB1 to be this fall? So let's get into this conversation. I've been avoiding it till the end of the season. We've reached the end of the season. So, in my opinion, I'm not ready to anoint Brock Purdy as a franchise quarterback or anything like that, but I do think he showed enough this year that he should be the starter next year. But now there's this injury variable thrown into it, right? He hurts his elbow. He could have ruptured that UCL. We don't know how serious it is. We know that it was serious enough that he could not throw the ball today. That's all we know, right? If it is really serious and he's missing an extended period of time, with Trey Lance rehabbing his ankle and he's going to not be ready for the first wave of offseason, I think it's for the first mini camp, I think he's going to be rehabbing through there, and then they hope to have him available in the summer. And then just where he is in terms of his development, I don't think they can bring him back penciled in as the starter. Ideally, if Brock Purdy's injury isn't serious, I would love for them to bring Purdy back. He's the starter, but also just keep Lance. Let Lance fully recover from his injury. Let him continue to develop, play and practice, whatever. Heck, Niners quarterbacks, I mean, knock on wood, it doesn't keep happening, but they seem to keep getting injured, so they all get their opportunities to play. And just go into this season with a financially stable quarterback situation, and you have options with Brock Purdy being the first option based on how he played this year. But if his injury is serious, now you get Trey Lance, and I don't think you can come into this season just with the way it would reflect on the locker room and stuff like that, with Trey Lance penciled in as a starter without any competition. So you would either have to bring in a veteran who can kind of compete with Trey Lance. Like maybe it's Garoppolo, but I doubt it would be Garoppolo. But somebody who's like a Teddy B, something like that. Something like that, where he's a high-level backup for Lance, or he's a starter that you can push Lance and kind of compete and have that going into the season as Brock Purdy recovers. Or the third option is, depending on what Brady's doing, I mean, I don't think Rodgers would get traded to the 49ers, but I guess he's an option too. But really, the third option would be Brady, right? Depending on what he's doing. We know he's interested in playing for the 49ers, and we know he wanted to play for the 49ers when he originally left New England. The Niners said no. I still think Brady has it in a lot of ways. There's certain things of his game that just continue to be outstanding. He still moves in the pocket like really, really well. He still obviously processes at an elite level. He's now a little gun shy under pressure. He's a little gun shy with people around him, but he still throws the ball so great. He would be the highest level thrower the 49ers have maybe, had since Steve Young playing quarterback for them. He would be, even at 48, even at 47. Obviously, all time, he's probably the best quarterback they've ever had. No offense to Montana, but to me, Brady was a better quarterback than him. Not that we're going to have that debate today, and I might have just upset quite a few people, but either way, yeah, even at 46, I think he would be an upgrade. I think he's still better than even Purdy. I think a lot of it is just because how it looked in Tampa this year. They couldn't run it. Their offense was a mess in a lot of ways. Schematically, it was a mess. It wasn't a well-schooled offense, and it exacerbated Brady's age and the things that are missing in his game that were once there, similar to how it happened in New England in 2019. I say all of this to say, where if I think Purdy's injury is serious and the Niners had the opportunity to get him and it's still somewhat cost effective, I think that's the route to go, right? Hall of Fame quarterback. We know he wanted to be on this team at one point. He wanted to be drafted by this team, and then he wanted to join this team just 2 years ago. We know how talented this roster is top to bottom. You're still bringing Debo back, and Debo's hopefully going to go through a healthy offseason and be healthy to start next year. You're bringing back Ayuk, who had, in my opinion, he was a top 15-ish receiver this year in the NFL. The way he played, how much improvement he showed from last year to this year, with the urgency, his routes, with how he ran his routes, how well he ran them, how well he blocked, how well he sealed the edge, the toughness, everything he played with, I thought he was terrific. I think he could explode with Brady. Same with Debo, really. You got McCaffrey, who's just a perfect fit for Brady. You've got Kittle, who's an amazing fit with Brady. Got a good offensive line, in my opinion. Got to figure what you're going to do at right tackle with McGlinchey entering free agency this year. And then this defense is still going to be top notch. I mean, we'll see what happens between Ward and Mosley. One of those guys has to come back, and, we'll see how they regain depth in their defensive line, but they've shown the ability to do that, and they're going to re-sign Nick Bosa. So in a lot of ways, I think they would put Brady in the same situation the 2020 Bucs put him in, and he won a Super Bowl. And I think that if you ran it back with Brady, you could win a Super Bowl in 2023. I really think so. I think you could also do it with Purdy, and maybe, hey, Trey Lance, if he plays the full year and he develops the way you think he could develop, because that's why they drafted him where they did and traded what they did to draft him, then maybe it's with him. I think this team is still that good, but that's kind of my read on the quarterback situation today. 5 hours removed from the season being done. I think that, again, if Purdy is not seriously injured, I think you go Purdy, Lance, maybe some sort of veteran that you can kind of um, stash in your practice squad, but a guy who's there to have, or maybe you just keep three quarterbacks just because of how snake bitten you've been with quarterback injuries. But that's the route I would go, right? Cost effective. Purdy has played well enough as the starter to make you very encouraged that he could be something. You still believe so much in Lance because you traded up for him and all of that, and you can go with that. Or if Purdy's seriously injured, rather than going the veteran Lance route, I would rather have them just go Brady for 1 year or 2 years or however long he wants to play. You still keep Purdy. He gets to rehab. He comes back. Maybe you pivot off Brady because maybe Brady ages the 1 year. And then you still have Lance, who, is still developing, is still cost effective. And maybe if Brady doesn't work, Lance wows you with how he is this season. And he's able to stay healthy the entire season. He's able to really get better. And you're blown away and you just feel like, yeah, he is the exact player we thought he would be. It just took a year longer than what we thought it would. And you have your quarterback there. But right now, that's my read on the situation. Thank you for the donation, Titus. And I hope I answered that well. Fossey asks the number one question, right? Has availability at quarterback been Kyle Shanahan's Achilles heel? I would say, yeah, 100%. In a lot of ways, you could maybe, I know a lot of people would argue to put the onus on him, but it's hard, man. Football is a game that leads to injuries. I feel like a lot of people try to reason like this is why you're getting injured or this is why this sequence of events is happening. But really, sometimes it's just the reality of playing football. And only 1 out of 32 teams gets to be the happy team at the end of the season, right? Only 1 out of 32 gets to win the Super Bowl. And it's not only that you have to be the best team, you need so many things to go right. And unfortunately for the 49ers, that hasn't been happening. But you know what? The thing I always say, and I understand this like devastation where it feels like we have the black cat running through a franchise and everything just keeps going wrong every time we make these deep playoff runs and something comes bad. I would say even to that, as someone who's only experienced that part of being a Niners fan or experienced them being, terrible, I've never gotten that Super Bowl satisfaction that a lot of you have had. I would say like, yeah, in a lot of ways, the Niners have also, been lucky to be that team at the end 5 times. Not only were they the best team, they were great, no doubt, but it also takes a little bit of luck along with being the best team to close it out and ultimately win the Super Bowl. And there's a lot of franchises who've never been able to be that. And so, you need a little bit of luck, obviously. In a lot of ways, you could argue that the Eagles were the better team no matter what. All I'll continue to say is I wish I could have seen that today. I wish I could have seen this game with both teams playing with their quarterbacks fully healthy. I think it would have been a great game, and I think it would have been fun to watch. And I think I could have lived with the result a little bit more. I mean, I'm going to have to live with it no matter what, but I wish I could have, I feel like I could have, been a little more satisfied with the result, or not satisfied. I wouldn't have this empty feeling if I knew that if I could just see how it played out and I could see both game plans and see how these two teams attacked each other and see if the talent really was what it was. And I thought it was when I watched this game, honestly. Like, I thought the Niners' weapons came to play, really. It's unfortunate. Appreciate the donation, though, Fossey. Rafael Lamego says, yeah, are you worried about Purdy's injury for next season? And if yes, do you think the Niners should go after A-Rod or Brady? Huge fan from Brazil. I don't know if you heard my answer to this, Rafael. I'm assuming you asked this before I went through that, but I just wanted to make sure. This is a little bit harsh. He's been in the league for 15 years. Not everybody can be Patrick Mahomes. To have a niche in the league is pretty cool. And he's been able to last. It's unfortunate. It's just he was out of place, and that's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that he was also put into that situation, man. So this is a more interesting conversation, right? Because if Purdy has this ruptured UCL and can't play next year, and they're unable to get Tom Brady, right? Um, what would they do at quarterback, right? I'm kind of rewording what you're asking just because I feel like that's another topic of conversation. And I'm going to do the classic Greg Olsen today, right? Burkhart would ask him a question, right? He would be like, so it's 3rd and 5. Should the Eagles pass or run? And Olsen would be like, yeah, that's super interesting. They should pass or run. They've usually ran in these situations. Excuse me. It's late night. I'm using really bad grammar, but they've usually ran in these situations, but they could also throw because they're a passing football team. And so we would still be left with the Burkhart's original question: should the Eagles run or pass? Right? I was really frustrated with the commentary today, anyway. But yeah, and that's kind of the answer I'm going to give you. I think this is actually one of the most interesting conversations that we're not really going to focus on having. But if in this case that somebody else makes a big run at Brady or you don't get Brady, Purdy's injury is serious. Like they're going to have to find something, and that's where I think paying attention to what Tennessee ends up doing with Ryan Tannehill is going to be cool to see. Jimmy Garoppolo will once again be a part of this conversation. I said bye to Jimmy Garoppolo 2 years ago, and he's still been a part of this conversation. I'm not going to be wrong I'm going to be wrong thinking Jimmy Garoppolo still has an opportunity to return to the 49ers this offseason rather than thinking he's gone. And so those are the two names I would say you're going to have to watch. And Tennessee's Ryan Tannehill situation is all going to be based on they do have an out. They have an easier out next year, but they do have an out on his contract. Do they take it? I don't think Malik Willis showed enough for them to take that out with Tannehill. I think there's a lot of things wrong with their football team, but Tannehill isn't one of them. Then again, there's always the Teddy B's. I don't know. I think Tyrod signed a 2-year deal with the Giants, so I think he might be there for another year. Maybe Daniel Jones, but I think he's going to be too expensive, and why would the Niners want to pay anything? Look, it's just going to be important to keep this quarterback room cheap, I think, right now. Until the 49ers find that guy, whether it's Trey, whether it's Purdy, whether it's somebody who's not there right now, maintaining cost effectiveness at this quarterback room is going to be the most important thing, because we see Shanahan can kind of make things happen with, I don't want to say chicken soup out from chicken, you know what, but he can kind of take less than ideal situation and turn it into a decent situation on offense. And then this defense is loaded. You want to keep this team as loaded as possible to make it as easy for the quarterback. Chelsea Fanatic says, hey, Vish, keep up the good work. I don't think the 49ers can win a Super Bowl with Kyle Shanahan. So I don't really understand this. They've been to 3 NFC championships out of 4 games. It's hard to win a Super Bowl. I guess I don't know how we can say this definitively, right? Because we know that you change a couple things here and there, and they could have won the Super Bowl. Like we know that. It just so happened that like those things didn't happen for them. I don't think it shows a lack of capability to do it. I just think it shows that things didn't exactly work the way they should. I don't like doing these definitives, to be honest. And the reason I don't is because I've been burned doing them before, right? I've been burned saying the wrong thing. I mean, can't imagine. I've only been doing this for 2 or 3 years, but I could probably fit an entire stream on the number of wrong things, bad takes I've said, because I've had confidence that's irrational about it and doesn't necessarily, and sometimes I have logic that I didn't think through as well as possible. And so I don't know if it's even fair to make any sort of definitive like that, right? They've been so close. How can you say that he can't do it? He's shown the capability of doing it, but he's also not achieved it. Yeah, I have a comp actually. So I don't know if I ever said this on stream. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. I was talking about it to Larry, and then there was a few other people I talked to this about. But in a lot of ways, this 49ers team reminds me a lot of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers team of the early 2000s, who had, some devastating playoff losses, specifically to Philly as well, before they ultimately got over the hump with John Gruden. They're just looking for that one quarterback, really, that can get them over the hump. And for that team, it was Brad Johnson. They didn't need much. They just needed Brad Johnson. They had Sean King start an NFC championship game for them. And, you had John Lynch, who was on that team. In a lot of ways, it reminds me of that team, right? You have the outstanding Hall of Fame front player like Warren Sapp. You have Nick Bosa. You have the heavily underrated, sidekick to that dominant front player who's really, really good. Everybody knows he's good, but he's not talked about maybe as much with Simeon Rice and then Eric Armstead. Again, I'm not making direct comparisons. Those were great players. These are some good players who are still filling out their legacy, but it just reminded Fred Warner, Derek Brooks, dominant linebackers, right? Rondé Barber, Jimmy Ward, just some comparisons like that. And again, it's a different scheme, but in a lot of ways, the scheme is also similar. So yeah, and then Shanahan and Lynch have roots with the Bucs, right? That's where Shanahan started coaching in the NFL, and that's where Lynch played for all those years and first established his Hall of Fame career. And so that team was also snake bitten for a little bit too. They had some rough playoff losses, and then they ultimately got over the hump. Maybe you could argue, right? I'm answering this question. Maybe it was a change in head coach. I think Shanahan is 100% the right man for the job. I think he really is a great coach. I thought a lot of what he did this season was outstanding coaching, and I don't think it should be forgotten because he played an absolute juggernaut on the road with a fourth-string quarterback who's played for half the league. It's really hard to make statements like that. Glass City, I really appreciate the donation. He says, Philly's offense didn't impress me at the start. The Niners defense had a good game plan and played well. Hurts was struggling. Defense deep pass defended well. The run was defended. Okay, excuse me. If healthy, we could have won, but we will never know. I agree with all these points, except for I was impressed with Philly's offense. I was impressed with Hurts' patience as a quarterback, and then the one-on-one shots he took. I was impressed. I was extremely impressed with how Mooney Ward played in this game. They pressed him a lot. He challenged both Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown at the line of scrimmage, and he ran with them. Besides the one play where he was playing off 3rd and 8, he's kind of squatting, thinks A.J. Brown's sitting down at the sticks, and A.J. Brown, runs right by him. Hurts missed, and that would have been like an 80-yard touchdown. So I guess they missed there. But, yeah, I thought the Niners defense really played well. I didn't think it was the Philly's offense not being impressive. I just thought they were going up against a top-notch defense. And right, if healthy, they could have won. Maybe. Yeah, I agree with you. I would have given them a chance to win the game. But they also could have lost if healthy. Again, I would have just liked to have seen it played out. That's all I wanted. Heartless Zhao says, thoughts on Juwan Jennings, might get paid more somewhere else. Yeah, I think he is a player that could get paid more somewhere else. He's a really good player. As a third receiver, he's a tenacious blocker. He's a good competitor. He runs routes really well. He separates really well from man coverage. A big slot is an advantage in this league for sure. But I also think that Ray McLeod adds a different element, and I thought he played very well on offense when he got opportunities this year. I don't know if he would be a direct replacement of Jennings, but I do think he could play in the slot and kind of be a complement to Debo and Ayuk. You've got Danny Gray, who you drafted in the 3rd round, and, we still got to see what they got in that. And then I do think they could replace Jennings. So as much as I would like Jennings to stay the same way, I guess, different player, different style, but I guess similar growth and impact on the 49ers and trajectory, the same way I wanted Bourne to stay after the Super Bowl year. But I do think that is a player that they can let walk and replace. And I do think that is also a player that would get money elsewhere because he is a very good one and valuable in his role. Glass City, my bad. I've been moving through the comments. So I got to your super chat, and I really appreciate it. Paul Gaither, great friend of the show. Always appreciate your contributions. He says, I don't blame Josh for his limitations. I blame Kyle and Lynch for choosing him. I blame Kyle for sending Brock back out there and giving up instead of trying something, anything. Christian McCaffrey quarterback, Juice quarterback. Paul, I understand you're emotional, but we gotta go through this a little bit because I don't agree with this. So I blame Kyle and Lynch for choosing him. What other quarterback is there to choose when you're choosing your 4th quarterback? You've had two quarterbacks injured. Really, when they signed Josh Johnson, they had a 3rd one injured, right? Because Brock Purdy injured his oblique too. And Josh Johnson was almost set to play the Thursday night game against Seattle. There's not a lot of choices there. Josh Johnson is a veteran quarterback, right? He's been around. You would think that he could at least do the basic stuff, right? Which is get you lined up, get you in and out of the huddle, and catch the snap. He didn't do any of those things today. He was also put in a tough situation. Again, being thrown into the middle of the NFC Championship game as a league journeyman. It's not easy, and it's not fair to put that much blame on him. You're right. But it's also not fair to really blame Kyle and Lynch because, again, there was not many other opportunities. Sending Brock back out there, I mean, they had really no other option at quarterback. And I guess you could try Christian McCaffrey. They threw one pass with him. It was one of the worst passes I've probably seen today from any player. besides maybe Mahomes, not being able to get the ball out on the screen and fumbling the ball completely out of his hands. I mean, that Christian McCaffrey throw was terrible. I guess you could run maybe some sort of wildcat, whatever. Shanahan said they had that installed. They just needed to get a couple of first downs to get to it, and they couldn't do anything on offense there. Sending Brock back out there was as much as, look, there's nothing we can really do. And at least with Brock Purdy, we can get in and out of the huddle when we try to run the football. And so, yeah, Paul, I understand the emotions, but man, it's really hard to sit here and blame a situation when you're down to a fourth-string quarterback. I don't know if it's fair. Blank says it exactly right. Death, taxes, and Jimmy might stay with the 49ers. Super Bowl 57, who will win and who do you want to win? Yeah, I think if I had to pick a team after today, I'd pick Philadelphia. I think they're just too overwhelming on both lines of scrimmages. And Mahomes still looked pretty great, but I didn't love the look of Mahomes' ankle compounded with the fact that he was only 85% of Superman and not fully 100% of Superman. And they missed those receivers, right? They missed Mecole Hardman. They missed Kadarius Toney. Receivers really struggled today to get open against Cincinnati. Now, Cincinnati's also a really good team, but I like Philly's defense even better than Cincinnati's defense. So, yeah, I would pick Philadelphia today. I think the talent is overwhelming. But, again, the Chiefs' defense is good. Chris Jones is a game wrecker. And Mahomes is Mahomes. You can't really count them out. But who do I want to win? Yeah, I don't really have a rooting interest, to be honest. I can usually find something to attach myself to when the Niners lose, but yeah, I don't really have a rooting interest today. I thought last year was a little bit easy. The Rams were in the Super Bowl. I found myself in a very weird spot for the first time last year, a spot I necessarily didn't like being in either, which was part of the reason I took a break from streaming, full disclosure, where I was rooting for Stafford because I'd had so much back and forth about my takes about Stafford. But then I was obviously rooting for the Bengals because I don't like the Rams as a 49ers fan. And I found myself in a very weird emotional spot after the game, too, because I, again, was happy for Stafford, but disgusted that the Rams won the Super Bowl. But this year, I have no emotions towards this game. I really don't. I'm just hoping we get to see a really, really good football game. But, yeah, I don't have any rooting emotions towards it. Cisco 1946 says, no, Vish. Jimmy, please make it stop. Well, I'm sorry. Blame the 49ers. Jimmy just keeps coming back. So Paul Gaither says Bill Walsh played Freddie Solomon at QB. I guess maybe they could have tried Debo. The one option I think they could have actually tried is maybe Juwan Jennings. I don't know why he's not brought up in this conversation. I was just made aware today. I saw on Twitter that Juwan Jennings was a top 10 rated quarterback, 4-star recruit coming out of high school when he committed to Tennessee before he changed positions to play wide receiver. So that's me, he could throw it a little bit. He was a higher rated quarterback coming out of high school than Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, and Sam Darnold, which is pretty cool. But Jared Stidham was the first rated quarterback in that class. So, and Kyler Murray was second. So pretty cool class. Well, Juwan Jennings was there with those names as a high school quarterback. Maybe he could have played quarterback, but what are we really supposed to say or do here? Would that really have made a difference against this Philadelphia team? No, Paul. I'm sorry to say it wouldn't have. Yeah, MTGA says Kyle is 6-3 in the playoffs with the 49ers. Yeah, they've been exceptional in the playoffs, right? 3 deep runs, 3 NFC championship games, 3 heartbreaking ways to lose the NFC championship game / Super Bowl. But yeah, they've made some deep runs for sure. Brandon Vincent says, are the quarterback injuries a byproduct of Kyle's offense run first mentality? He has seemed to prioritize run blocking versus pass pro. Kind of. I mean, some of these plays the quarterbacks have gotten, in tough spots in the pocket, right? Like there's some good pass protection lines where the quarterback has been in tough spots too. I think they've also been unlucky with just how bodies have gotten, right? The first Jimmy Garoppolo ACL was a non-contact injury where he just cut and the torque of his cut, right, ruptured his knee. That was that. Then, you had the Garoppolo ankle. Quinnen Williams got him in the pocket when he was moving out of the pocket. But Garoppolo also, even pre-49ers, never proved that he could really protect himself playing quarterback, right? He's gotten banged up just about every season he's played besides 2019. He even got banged up in New England. To me, the great quarterbacks are able to protect themselves. They're able to play through injuries. You got to continuously start. That's, to me, job number one of being a great quarterback is being available to play 17 games every year, right? That's why the consecutive start streaks to me are so impressive, because it's so hard to start every game given how physical the position is and given how mentally and physically rigorous it is to play the position. And then in terms of the offensive line, like, I guess, but Atlanta didn't have a strong pass protecting offensive line. They had Alex Mack and a bunch of younger guys on their offensive, not younger guys, but a mix of different types of guys in their offensive line. And Matt Ryan stayed healthy, right? I mean, Matt Ryan also has better size in the pocket and all three of these guys. Maybe Lance has similar size to him. He's a better athlete maybe in the pocket than Jimmy. I don't know if I would use the word better athlete, Matt Ryan, to Brock Purdy or to Trey Lance, but I do think he's a more nifty mover with inside that confined pocket area than those guys. Obviously a greater thrower than both those guys. I mean, Matt Ryan's going to the Hall of Fame, but he kept himself healthy. Schaub kept himself healthy. Brian Hoyer did get hurt. I don't know. I never know what to say, to be honest, with injuries, man. I feel like I would like to give you something that means something, but what am I really supposed to say? I don't offer any medical expertise here. And I've seen this offense being run fine by so many different quarterbacks with the same schematics, a lot of the same matchups with how they, pass protect versus different fronts, do all these different types of things. And the quarterback doesn't get injured. It's, in a lot of ways, it's snake bitten. And today I thought Reddick made a great play. And I do think it was also a case of where Brock Purdy's size, it did make a difference, right? When Reddick's coming down and swatting that arm, bigger quarterbacks, right, with more size, they're able to be stronger through that when they're releasing the ball, and he's not hitting, as high on their arm as maybe, I don't know. I don't know. GB Vol says, what is the point of a backup quarterback that was totally useless? A cardboard cutout? At that point, what were they going to get at backup quarterback? I guess the only argument you could say is they should have put in a waiver claim for Baker Mayfield. Maybe that would have been the one guy in this situation that would have been, he's there and he would have been better. But I also don't think the Niners wanted to go through the entire circus with Brock Purdy of having Baker Mayfield there. I don't know if it would have changed a lot with their season. I don't even know if Baker would have been able to been put in this situation and deliver the way he could deliver a win. I don't know. I don't even think I could say that definitively. He might have delivered a more competitive performance because he's a better football player than Josh Johnson. But when you're down to quarterback 4, man, it's hard to provide reasons. Enki 19 says, at Vish, who will be the defensive coordinator next season? Who will be the next defensive coordinator this season? Obviously, we all want it to be Vic Fangio, right? We know that the 49ers are obviously interested. There's mutual interest with Vic Fangio. But he was allegedly, according to Tom Pelissero, he signed a massive 3-year contract with Miami. And then Mike Klisch reported that, no, it's not necessarily there. So I don't know what's there. Obviously, that would be the goal. I think Corey Unlin, their defensive back coach, might be the guy in the building they promote. I don't know that. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't really have strong opinions about this stuff anymore. There's a lot of different guys in the NFL that I like their defense, but I also think structurally, no matter who comes to coordinate this defense, the Niners defense is going to maintain the principles that they've maintained. I think it's a little bit Baltimore Ravens-ish, where they've set a culture for this defense, and they've built it around 2, I would say, future Hall of Fame caliber players in Nick Bosa and Fred Warner. And they're going to continue doing that. And the different coordinators that come in are going to follow that culture and structure rather than with wrinkles of their own game plan, rather than come in and, completely change everything they do. And from that standpoint, I have confidence that Shanahan will find the right guy who can communicate the right message. He struck gold twice. Saleh was great. And I think D'Amico was even better. D'Amico is obviously a prodigy in his own right? To go from 5 years He started as a quality control coach 5 years ago, and he's about to become a head coach. He's a prodigy. But I have no doubt Shanahan will find the right guy. And I think the culture he set for defense, the talent they've drafted on defense, and the plans they have and how they play through their defense, it starts with him. He creates that culture. And so, yeah. Daniel Valencia Backoff says, yeah, I also thought Jennings had another year. He asked the question, though, and right now I'm not exactly 100% sure of that, so I did talk about it. But, yeah. Blank asked Vish, you watch Last of Us? No, no, I don't. I'm not a big TV guy, to be honest. Yeah, I'm pretty boring. I watch football in my free time. I watch football during the week. I watch TV shows here and there, but I get bored of them pretty fast. So yeah, I don't watch Last of Us. I was most recently watching Suits for a little bit on TV on Amazon Prime. That was pretty good. But yeah, mainly I don't really watch TV shows. My favorite TV show is The Office, but besides that, I just get too bored with the rigorous pace and the unnecessary episodes and the kind of repetitive storylines of sitcoms and all these different kinds of shows. So I'm not a big TV guy, no. I also watch a lot of sports, so I'm pretty into tennis. Big Rafa fan. I watch basketball a lot. I'm a Pistons fan, obviously. That's disappointing, but if they could get Wemby, my life would change in a lot of ways. I'll tell you that. And then I've been getting into watching a lot of mixed martial arts actually recently, funnily enough. Just been completely intrigued and interested in the fighter lifestyle. I think it's really, really cool. I'm not really necessarily so digging like all the blood and the violence and that. That's not really me. But yeah, I've been getting into watching that too. So yeah, I spend my time doing that. Daniel Garcia says, how do you feel about trading Armstead, moving off his salary, getting some picks in return? Maybe this is an intriguing idea today. I don't really want to consider it. I think Armstead is so valuable for everything they do. I think he's such a dominant player. I would like them to get some size. I don't think they replaced DJ Jones adequately this year. Juwan Kinlaw had a rough playoffs. And I'm hoping he can go through this offseason healthy, right? There were a lot of reports that he's not fully healthy right now. I'm hoping he can somehow get to this offseason, go through it fully healthy. I know I'm still holding out because my pre-draft opinion of Juwan Kinlaw was high, but I still believe in the talent, and I feel like if he gets the opportunity to train an entire offseason and go through it, he could really be a player. But I do think they need to add some size, and I don't think trading Armstead or moving Armstead is going to help them in that direction. And while the return would be good, Armstead's a leader. He's a top player. He makes this a better football team than having 2 or 3 picks. It's just my opinion. Heartless Yao sums it up, right? We were between Josh Dobbs, Mike Glennon, Cam Newton. There were no good options, right? Johnson theoretically was familiar with the scheme. There you go. If Heartless Yao was here doing this show instead of me, if this was the Heartless Yao show, that discussion might have finished in one concise, well thought out sentence that just makes the entire point. Unfortunately, I went on that long diatribe when I could have just read his comment. Paul Gaither is coming back. He says, I respect your opinion, Vish. I disagree. But question time. Fine. Ooh, Paul, we'll have to continue this disagreement another time. Do you think this game causes the NFL to consider allowing teams to dress an emergency third QB? Yeah, I think it does. I don't know why they got rid of it in the first place. And I saw Mike Tannenbaum tweeted about it. And I think it helps. It definitely helps because you know what? The quarterback, as much as I hate all the rules that are driven to prop up the quarterback, I still believe that I still understand, not believe, I understand how much the quarterback is important to the overall product of the NFL. And it sucked to watch today's game with Josh Johnson playing quarterback as just a game, but it also sucked to watch today's game with Brock Purdy having to be forced back into that game. The 49ers at least had somebody who could throw a forward pass. It would have been nice. Not that it would have made the result of the game any different or it's any worse, or better or worse or anything. I just think it would have made it more watchable for all of us. So I agree with you there, Paul. But come on. I need you to give me that disagreement and let me know why you're disagreeing instead of letting it go. Titus Mohler says, did you see Steve Young was warming up in the parking lot? Yeah, I saw that. I love how I love how Jerry Rice reps the 49ers too. Jerry Rice is like the best fan out of all of us. He seems to get as amped up and emotional as anybody. And so that's like really cool to see, right? He's the greatest player in NFL history and he loves this team and he gets as emotional and excited about this team as any normal fan, which is awesome. Consa says, I still think passing on Wirfs and taking Kinlaw is hurting us. I think we win one of these trips. Yeah, definitely possible, right? Both tackles were banged up last year. No McGlinchey, and then Trent Williams was really hurt in the NFC Championship game. And then this year, you were facing a generational pass rush where having the second best right tackle in the NFL after Lane Johnson, an awesome player in Tristan Wirfs, would have made a massive difference in both the run and the pass game. I agree. Again, at the time, it's hard for me to 2020 this pick because at the time I was so high on who Javon Kinlaw was as a player. And it's hard for me to 2020 criticize it because I'm being hypocritical. But you're right. I do think it affects them. In fact, I look, the Trey Lance trade in a way is a sunk cost right now. And the 49ers season results have not really affected it. But in a way, I feel like because they haven't necessarily gotten the contribution in either of these 2 years yet from Trey Lance. And in the long term, it could play out, right? This could be a completely stupid comment, but they haven't gotten it right now. I feel like having those 2 first-round picks and picking a defensive player like, say, Micah Parsons, who went at 12, random example, but right, picking some defensive player and having that opportunity to have him, and then a first rounder this year and picking another defensive player, another skill player, another offensive lineman, another something, right? Maybe it was a guard or a center that they would have picked early to play instead of Brendel or Burkhart, or because, you know, he was as good as he was for a rookie. He was still a 5th round pick who had some growing pains. And so maybe if they did that, it could have also changed the result. It's easy to have these conversations. They made the moves they made. They still had a very good football team. And they were still in a position to win this game in so many ways. Even with those quote unquote missteps, 3rd string quarterback and all of that, it's just unfortunate he got hurt. MG says, just got here. I was wondering your thoughts on Debo. I don't know what you mean by thoughts on Debo. I think Debo had a season similar to what he had in 2020, all the way in a lot of ways. And I think that was just a product of him, just like in 2020, being banged up. I felt like he got banged up early in the season and he never really found his footing and was fully healthy. I'm excited to see Debo go through this entire offseason, have the opportunity to train. He still shows, and when he's healthy and playing well, the Niners offense still runs through him. They still try to get him the ball. And having him and McCaffrey puts so much stress on defenses. I thought he didn't have the same gear that he had last year. I thought he was maybe 85% in terms of top speed of Debo. And I thought he was a little sloppy with his routes this year, the same way he was in 2020. But again, I thought a lot of it stemmed from him being banged up and playing through being banged up. I mean, the guy played the playoffs 3 weeks after having his body bent like a pretzel over his leg, having a knee and ankle injury. So I don't really have a lot of thoughts on Debo that way, right? Like, they paid him a lot of money, and a lot of people are looking for immediate results. I don't know if he had necessarily a bad season. I just think he didn't have a great season either. I thought he was banged up, and we will see how he bounces back next year. But I think the emergence of Ayuk, Kittle still being a stud, I still think Debo is still really good. I think we're going to see him bounce back this year and have a huge year next year. I really do. I think he's going to be training and fully focused this offseason, not having to worry about his contract, and I think he's going to come and kick butt. I mean, you saw the way he competed today down to the end. This means so much to him. You can see how much he cares about it. I wouldn't be shocked if he has a huge year next year. And yeah, I know there's going to be some trade Debo conversation that will start in a month. I'm not going to participate in it. They paid him a lot of money this offseason to keep him. He's still an awesome player. I know I'm biased too. He's my favorite player in the league, but I don't prefer having these kinds of conversations. They just don't make sense to me. But I think that's what you were looking for, MG. I hope I answered that. my thoughts on Debo overall are that. I don't know if you were looking for that. Patrick Sheehan says, oh, let's get to this first. What is the Niners' top priority to address in the draft? So it's going to be obviously adding depth to the secondary, as usual. We'll see what they do at free safety. I don't know if Tayshaun Gibson is really someone they're gonna bring back. I don't know if they really have to bring him back. I think they can find another veteran as such in the market that might play quite well for them. But yeah, it's getting depth in that secondary, figuring out if Lenore is going to be your starting cornerback on the other side of Mooney Ward next year. If you can bring back Emmanuel Moseley, that situation. That's not necessarily in the draft, but that might include throwing a draft pick in there because Ambry Thomas didn't take the step that a lot of people were hoping he would take this year. And then finally, just adding depth, I guess, figuring out whether right tackle is going to be a thing, which leads into Patrick Sheehan's question. What players do I think won't be on the 49ers this year? The two I feel like I can immediately say off the top of my head is I think Mike McGlinchey is going to get a big contract somewhere. Right tackle is a valuable position. Mike McGlinchey's a top 10 pick. He's a very good run blocker. He's got tools that other right tackles don't have. He's good in this scheme, right? I know a lot of people don't like him, but a lot of coaches are probably looking at Mike McGlinchey as valuable. There's not a lot of, starting caliber right tackles available in the NFL. There's a lot of right tackles in the NFL who start or worse than Mike McGlinchey. I think somebody's going to pay Mike McGlinchey a good sum of money, and I'm not sure the Niners are going to really be able to match it. Not even a product of that. And so I think he's a guy that's going to walk, and I think they're going to draft somebody and have Colton McKivitz and that guy battle it out for who's going to be the right tackle, or sign somebody that's a veteran that's, a little cheaper, that's been around, that started a little bit, been a backup for a while, and again, have him battle it out with Colton McKivitz. And then the other one would be Jimmy Ward. I think in an ideal world, I would love for the 49ers to bring back Jimmy Ward. He was outstanding this year at nickel. He really was. I thought he played very well today too. And then we know how good he is at safety. He doesn't have the accolades reflecting how good of a player he really is. And I think he's a terrific player. I just think that he's not going to fit into the Niners price range. He's 31, 32. I think he's going to probably look for another contract that's $10 to $12 million, which is what he made the last 3 years. I think the Niners would hope to sign him to $6.5 million, something like that. I don't know if Jimmy Ward really would be looking for that. I think this is going to be his last big payday, and he's going to try to cash in as he should. And so from that standpoint, I don't think he'll be coming back. And in fact, I've said this before. I think as much as I love Jimmy Ward, the 49ers should prioritize signing Emmanuel Moseley over him if we're going to talk about signing one of those secondary players. Which is also your question for El Quadra. So there we go. Answered 3 in 1. Cisco 1946. And I think I'm coming down to the end of the last few comments and questions I'm going to get to. But Cisco 1946 says it's Shanahan's lack of personnel scheme that does not account for key matchups that hurts us, i.e. Kraft versus Reddick. Really? So I think you mean Croft. And he does account for it. This is what I don't understand. Like, when you break down offensive football and you're going up against a really good defense, at times you're not going to be fundamentally perfect, right? You can't win every matchup on the field. If you want to throw something, it's about managing risk and reward. And there's going to be plays, just like there's plays where a tight end blocks Nick Bosa. There's plays where a tight end blocks TJ Watt. How many times do we see that happen for TJ Watt? If you have a good defensive scheme, you have good structure, and the Eagles do, and the way they play their fronts, they like playing that penny front, right? With those 3 big wide, they got a 0 technique, 5 technique, 5 technique, right? And then they play those 2 outside linebackers wide and over the line. It creates space and it creates a lot of opportunities to rush the passer. And that can also create opportunities where when you got 2 guys over the tackle and the tight end, where you're going to force Reddick on the tight end. He's a great player. He made a great play. But this happens in every football game, right? Like, even the Chiefs get in situations like this. The Bengals get in situations like this. Sometimes these things just happen schematically. It's happened to the 49ers this year, and Brock Purdy hasn't gotten hurt. I feel like people think that there should be an answer built in on every play. You should always have the right call against the right look. You should always have the right matchup against the right look. That's not the reality of the NFL, right? Like, the big play the Niners hit to Juwan Jennings, right, in the Seattle game, right? They had the two seam verticals flooding the backside against three deep zone, right? They flooded the corner's third, and Brock Purdy threw a pretty poor ball that Quandre Diggs could have picked, but Juwan Jennings made a fantastic catch, right? Against Seattle. Got him down near the goal line. Well, that play, right? The Niners had Deebo Samuel on the backside blocking Uchenna Nwosu. And he didn't really do a good job blocking him. He kind of restricted him, and then Juszczyk came over and helped. But like, that's not sound, right? When you're scheming something to the backside to create some sort of look, sometimes you're at a disadvantage. And Deebo did enough at that time, right? If Uchenna Nwosu had knocked out Brock Purdy on that play, all of you would be talking about, how is Deebo blocking Uchenna Nwosu? And you would not be talking about the big play to Juwan Jennings. So there's a risk reward to all of this. I'm just pointing out an example of another situation where you could say they weren't sound in terms of how it was blocked up, but they delivered a big play. It's really easy to do the 2020. Well, Reddick should never be blocked by Croft. Well, yeah, ideally, yeah. But it's not always the reality of how the football game goes, right? Philadelphia's game plan is to get Reddick on Croft. Why? Because Reddick can do what he did. Whether he got him injured or not in terms of changing game, right? He had a sack fumble on that play. He's an awesome player. MG is going back to the Memoryville. He's saying, I remember when Jerry Rice just started, and a lot of people said he couldn't catch the ball. I don't remember that, but I know people talking about that, and I've seen that being talked about. Val Ramos said should have given Steve Young a helmet. Yeah, maybe. Honestly, couldn't have. Maybe Shanahan should have suited up. Titus Mohler, I appreciate you giving this as a super chat, my friend, but I answered this, right? Top priority in the draft. We got to be looking to get depth in those trenches in the secondaries. It feels like we talk about the same positions with the 49ers every year, but those are the positions that win and lose football games. I feel like certain positions, they gain depth and are able to get players so quickly, right? Like Marcelino McCrary-Ball is a guy that really intrigues me to be someone maybe as a future player in this linebacking core, especially if Al-Shaair walks and he leaves with D'Amico, which I would look at as a massive possibility. He fits the mold of just a guy who's so reckless with his body, so fast, and the Niners coach their linebackers and teach people to play within their scheme so well. I wouldn't be surprised if he's the guy starting next year with Greenlaw and Warner. And then, of course, running back is a position they handle really well. They invest a lot into it. Hopefully they're done investing into it for a little while, but yeah, they handle that position really well. They handle their defensive line really well too in terms of value finds, but it's always good to draft those players as well too. So yeah. Heartless Zhao says, yeah, we could have been up 7-0 if it wasn't for that BS incompletion that wasn't called. Yeah, I don't really get on the refs. I hate the replay officials for not giving that view to Shanahan for him to be able to throw the flag. Like, awesome job by the Eagles getting the line of scrimmage. But, that was a bang-bang play. A lot of people thought it was a catch on the spot. It was really a great athletic play by Devontae Smith. But, again, I felt like Shanahan should have been afforded that angle right then and there. I feel like technology is good enough where it should be there. And I feel like, yeah, that's where it blew that. Niner Abat says, you don't think it's Kyle's fault for 4 injuries in one season. At some point, you need to realize the common denominator here. I'm not saying I don't think or I think it's his fault. You just have to give me a logical reason to understand other than, hey, injuries have occurred, which we know occurs playing football. And we're just going to put it on Shanahan because he's the common denominator. Like, they're doing this, and this is causing the quarterback to get injured. And other teams are doing this, and that's why their quarterback is staying healthy. I'm willing to listen to the argument, but I need to hear it from the perspective of that rather than framed as, well, he's just the common denominator. So therefore, something has to be wrong because these quarterbacks keep getting injured. As much as I like giving a reason for everything, I don't think there's necessarily a reason for everything. And we could maybe say, well, they focus too much on run blocking instead of pass blocking. They were a top half of the league pass blocking offensive line this year, right? Like, for example, Mahomes and Josh Allen, they function behind worse pass blocking lines than the 49ers. They didn't get injured all year. Of course, they're special players. Burrow, same thing, right? Like, even with those signings, Alex Kappa was a great signing, but Lyle Collins was a mess for a lot of this year. Jonah Williams was hurt. mess for a lot of this year. Joe Burrow didn't get hurt, right? So, like, what's the common denominator there? Like, is it an offensive line issue, personnel issue? Okay, it's a scheme issue. Well, how many different offenses in the league run this scheme? How many of those quarterbacks are getting hurt year to year? Okay, it's a Shanahan issue. What is Shanahan doing different from these coaches? Give me that. Until we're getting those things, I feel like this conversation is just, well, I'm upset that this keeps happening, and I'm going to say that this is the reason why. And I understand it. Like, I understand the logic behind this, but I can't wrap my head around blaming somebody for it until I have a valid reason on and an explanation on why, right? You give me, 10 cut-ups of this is what the 49ers do on offense. This is how they put their quarterback in this situation against these looks, and other teams never do this. Okay, you have something. It's leading to their quarterback getting hit. Or this is what the 49ers do in practice, or this is what they do that makes their quarterback get more susceptible to getting hurt than other quarterbacks. Then okay, yeah, I'm ready. Shanahan's fault. I'll give it to you then. But until we're having conversations like that, it just turns into just pure conjecture, and it's just us being emotional and trying to share something and trying to make a point that we're not really sure is there. And I find it difficult to be, talking about the sport and talking about just this situation that way, just because I don't feel confident in what I would have to say. I feel disingenuous in blaming somebody when I don't have reasons. So I'm going to, Little Ant. So I scrolled down to the bottom of the comment section, and he says, Little Ant, Vish in pure delusion. Kyle's scheme, long developing plays while keeping the quarterback in the pocket with a mediocre O-line to hold blocks. So, I mean, the Niners have been between Jimmy and Purdy and Mullins and all these guys have been how high in time to throw in the NFL, right? They've been 2.8, 2.54, 2.6, something in that in time to throw. They've been top 10 in the league. Besides Lance, they've all been top 10 in the league. Yeah. I mean, so I don't know. I guess maybe I could be delusional. I'm not saying I'm not delusional. You might have a point there, but that's not the point. Yosef El Bebe says, to answer your question, other teams double and triple team Nick Bosa. How come Kyle doesn't protect his quarterbacks? Did we watch today's game? They doubled players on a bunch of different plays. The Eagles just have 8 great players on their defensive line. Did we see last week how well they handled Micah Parsons for a lot of that game, who I'd argue is the best defensive player in the NFL? Do we see how they've handled Aaron Donald in this division? What are we talking about? Lack of plan, lack of ability to scheme. What are they not doing? Yeah, I'm asking that question. I understand it's rhetorical and nobody's going to answer me, but what are they really not doing? Yeah, yeah, that's kind of what I would say. Haha says, you're not delusional, but you do fidget. No, I think I'm good. My brain doesn't need that, but you're right. I do fidget, especially when I get into it. My fidgeting has improved a lot as the streaming has gone on. I think a lot of you who have been and seen the first Mondays with Vish episodes, I was bobbing and I was really bad with it. I'm trying my best, man. I fidget a lot. I get really antsy when I talk about football. I get really into it. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I do fidget. No, but I don't need to do that. I don't need to do that. And my man Titus Mohler says, I feel like the 49ers next level talent evaluation abilities. I feel like the 49ers have next level talent evaluation buddies. Who do you think is most responsible? Lynch, Kyle, and Adam Peters? I think it's all three. I think it's an organization working in unison, right? The thing about finding late round players, right? It's about finding players who fit a skill set for your scheme. So what teams really do in late round picks, right? Because I feel like the first 40, 50 players on a draft board for most teams is usually the same combination of players. Those are the elite players in terms of production, in terms of size, in terms of physical attributes. Those are the elite players in the draft. When you get later in the draft, it turns more into scheme fit, right? Like player X might be a fifth round, like the best example, right? The 49ers took Fred Warner in the third round. Great pick, right? All pro linebacker. John Harbaugh, right before the 2019 season, said he was shocked by how good Warner was because they didn't have him anywhere near that high in the draft board. Well, because he's not a fit exactly for what they were looking for at linebacker. And so when you have great conviction in what you're looking for, which the Niners do, and then you have a great coaching staff that's willing to coach guys who have the correct traits for the position that you're looking for, that's when you have this amazing quote unquote talent acquisition ability, because you're able to acquire talented players who are exactly what you're looking for and then able to teach them to play within your system. And so the Niners have that in spades, and that's why it works so well for them. Nate asks, what's your backstory of you being a Pistons fan and who you got in the NBA Finals? So my backstory to being a Pistons fan is quite uninteresting, actually. When I was little, when I first started watching sports, 2005, 2006, they were always in the Eastern Conference Finals, and they were good. And I just like Chauncey Billups for whatever reason. My dad was also always rooting for the Pistons. He's not maybe as into it, but he would root for them. And when I would watch sports with him, I would also root for them. And I really liked Chauncey Billups. And I also had a pair of blue basketball shorts when I was like 4 or 5 years old that looked just like Piston shorts. And so like when I would play on the little mini hoop that everybody would have, that, you know, the plastic one that goes to 4 feet, 5 feet, and 6 feet, I would have those same baggy blue shorts and I would pretend like I'm Chauncey Billups in my horrible plastic hoop basketball playing days in my house when I was little. And so that's why I kind of became a Pistons fan. I wish it didn't happen that way because it's not led to a lot of happiness in my life as a basketball fan. I'll tell you that. And then who I got in the NBA Finals right now, I like Boston. I like Boston a lot. Niner not a bot is very upset with me. He's yelling at me now. He says 2 times quarterback got hurt and Kyle had a tight end blocking Reddick. Again, like, should he have called timeout on that play? Is that what you're saying? You were going to have those kinds of looks at some point in the game. It happens. I would like to go back and watch the play on film too. I would actually like to see what the plan was, how things were set up, why the tight end was blocking Riddick. I could tell you and continue, but I don't think it's fair for me to continue this argument without having a little bit more knowledge on what was happening there. Haha says, we love your passion. I hope you do. I hope it comes across the right way. I really appreciate it. Green Glassful says, Brock is a better quarterback than Hurts. I don't agree with that, buddy, but I really appreciate you sending $2 my way. It's very appreciative. Green is Vish on Adderall. So no. I think these questions are funny. They are funny to me, but no. MTGA says all of the players praise Kyle. Yeah. Chris Henson says the 04 Pistons were crazy. Absolutely. They were something, weren't they? Too bad I was not even watching basketball when the 04 Pistons existed. I started, I think, 06. Yeah. I vaguely remember watching the LeBron famous 48-point Game 5 in the Palace when Antonio McDyess got ejected. Remember my dad being upset that Antonio McDyess got ejected. I didn't know better. I was 5 or 6 years old, so I was also upset that Antonio McDyess got ejected. No, Antonio McDyess was hurt. Rasheed Wallace got ejected. Excuse me. But yeah. Goat No Answer says, could have activated Trey instead of Kinlaw. Too risky counting on Purdy to stay healthy. Trey wasn't even ready. He got another surgery. How could they have activated him? Was he? Am I wrong? He wasn't ready. But I appreciate the support. Dwayne Witherspoon says, Dwayne, what up, Vish? Long time. Glad I found your channel. I'm glad you found my channel, man. I really appreciate it. But yeah, I've been going for an hour and 30 minutes, longer post game than I thought. I appreciate all of you guys for joining. as always, please hit the like, the subscribe, all of it. I really appreciate your support. It's been awesome to go through this football season. My first time really doing it on my own channel and by myself. Obviously, the last time I was here on my channel, I was with my buddy Blake. And so it's been a different experience. You guys have been patient, encouraging, and supportive. And you've also been nice enough also to offer some feedback to me as well to allow me to improve. I really appreciate all the support. I appreciate the interaction. I appreciate so many of you hanging around tonight. I know it was a rough day for a lot of us with the Niners losing, but I appreciate you guys hanging around and having this conversation with me. I really enjoyed this season. I enjoyed talking football with all of you. I'm excited to get into the off season. Please like, subscribe, share. I was about to end the stream. A couple of you asked some nice questions. I will answer these questions and then I will hop off. And Anthony says, why does Purdy always roll to the left? It feels like it's a right tackle, buddy. It is a little bit. There's also been some issues with the interior offensive line on the right side with between Burkhart and Brunskill. They've had some issues. He's also been, Brock Purdy also kind of instinctively likes to spin out the back and spin out left. It's something he does. And the Dallas kind of forced him that way too. They wanted him rolling that way if he does. So I think it's a product of a lot of different variables. I don't know, dude. I'm not as big on. I understand how it looks with McGlinchey in a lot of ways. Like what Micah Parsons did to him last week. You never want a first round tackle having that happen to him, right? That's going to be on Micah Parsons Hall of Fame reel. But I'm not maybe as harsh, or I don't know if harsh is the right word, or maybe I'm not, when I watch him, I'm not finding him to be as bad as other people. And maybe it's my wrong impression. I'm not going to pretend and say that what I'm saying is right and what you guys are saying is wrong. I'm just going to say that, I personally feel like he's not maybe been as bad as it's been made out to look. Brandon Vincent says, do you think any of our top defensive players want to play for D'Amico? I know we're in win now, but some potential early round picks. I don't know about that, but I do envision a few free agents signing. Like I think Jimmy Ward would be a huge signing. They got Petrie over there. Stingley's a good player. You add Jimmy Ward to that secondary, you got something pretty cool. I think Al-Shaair would be a player that would be a nice fit for them. A linebacker who really flies around, knows the scheme, throws his body around, be the perfect middle linebacker. Can do some of the stuff. He's no Fred Warner. I thought maybe he had a better year than Greenlaw last year, but Greenlaw closed the season much stronger than him. And then Greenlaw obviously was otherworldly this year in a lot of ways. He still had a few rough moments today, but he was otherworldly. And so I think that's a player that could go. And then Sergio Martinez, really appreciate the donation. He says, will Trey beat out Purdy for the starting job? I don't know. I'm going to try to get to camp this year. Not even from a content purposes. I just want to watch it up close and get a good feel for the camp in myself so I can have a better opinion rather than going off other people's reporting. Not that the reporting is inaccurate. I just wish to see it myself. But the way I see it right now is I don't know if Lance would beat out Purdy in a true quarterback competition setting, but I don't know if that's also indicative of what either of their futures are as quarterbacks, if that makes sense, right? Like in a quarterback competition setting, I just feel like Purdy is advanced in so many more ways that he would probably beat Lance out. But I don't think that's, again, indicative of Lance like not being a possibly franchise quarterback. It's just indicative of where he is today. So I don't know if that's necessarily the fairest way to put it, because you think just, okay, him losing a quarterback competition to Brock Purdy, or that's how I project it. Maybe he would outright beat him. I don't know. I don't know how either of these two guys look in practice. I'm going off what I saw from Lance, few snaps in a monsoon, few snaps in preseason, and then 2 snaps before he got hurt. And I got a really good feel for who Purdy is this year. And so, I just feel like from that, I think Lance would have a tough time beating him outright in a quarterback competition. And I don't know if that would be the best case scenario or it would be fair for Lance, because I don't know that his development track is really he his development is exactly this, just because of it. Like, I think if he got the opportunity to play, who knows what his development track is and his growth capacity is. We just haven't been able to see it. Chat GPT Pro says, it's a funny name, Fangio is not official to Miami yet. And I think that's really important because it would be very cool, obviously, if the 49ers could get him. But again, I'm not too concerned about this defensive coordinator position. Shanahan is exceptional at hiring a staff. He has great coaching ties to so many different people. And then again, I feel like this is Baltimore Ravens-ish with the way the Niners have built their defense. They've built this scheme system around two guys who I look as future Hall of Famers in Bosa and Warner. They have great structure. They're going to play their defense kind of in a similar way. I feel like no matter who the coordinator is, though each individual coordinator will put their own different wrinkle on it. Before I get to you, Niners Not a Bot, appreciate the donation though. And he says, Vish, have you ever thought about being a walk-on? Chris Madison says that. I don't exactly know what that means, but I obviously highlighted the question because I thought it was intriguing. I've never put thought into it. I think by walk-on, you mean like walking onto a football team. I would love for you to elaborate, and I would let you know. But Niners Not a Bot says, what was Jimmy laughing at on the sideline? I mean, do you expect him to just be fully somber and upset? It's reality of life. Sometimes it doesn't go your way. I'm sure he's upset. But I'm sure it doesn't affect him as much as if he was actually playing in the game. He also, has to move on. I know that it frustrates a lot of fans that he was smiling or laughing, but again, I'm not too bothered by it. It's not the worst thing. Goat no answers. It just seems nonchalant. Get rid of Jeff Wilson Jr. So let's talk about this. I don't know how nonchalance and Jeff Wilson Jr. relates, but let me tell you this. A 5th-round pick for Jeff Wilson Jr. this year was a steal. No doubt about it. I never thought in a million years they could have gotten a 5th-round pick for him. I was not too impressed with how he looked in Miami, to be honest. I still thought Mostert was the better player of the two. Yeah, I don't know about that one. I can't agree with that one, Goat no answers. But you are the GOAT. And I do have no answers for you because you're GOAT no answers. And then Josh Johnson is a backup for 8 or 9 games. Again, where else could they go? Heartless Yao summed it up beautifully. Cam Newton, Mike Glennon. What are we talking about? The one guy is Baker Mayfield. But would you and I and all of us have been able to put up with the circus that Baker Mayfield would have brought right behind Brock Purdy? JR Madrano, sorry about that. JR Madrano says, I recall a tweet saying you think this core of the 49ers can win a Super Bowl. Do you still believe that? Yeah. How am I not supposed to believe that after today? Are you telling me I'm not supposed to believe that because they lost to what I think is a great team on the road without their starting quarterback? No, I'm not going to believe it because of that. Again, if I saw them lose 31-7 today with Brock Purdy playing every snap under center, JR Madrano, we would have a real conversation, and I would have to change my opinion on this. A lot of the core still stays intact. Shanahan, to me, still is a top-notch coach. A lot of you disagree. That's fine. We will continue to have this debate. That's what makes it fun. The difference of opinion is okay. But I think he's a top-notch coach, and they didn't lose today because Philadelphia was better than them. Maybe Philadelphia is better than them, but we didn't get to find that out today because Brock Purdy got hurt. But I think that's all, guys. I really, once again, appreciate the support. It's been an awesome season. This has been really cool to do. You guys are awesome. The interaction's always great. You guys always bring it with questions and comments, and we're able to have great football conversation. I appreciate that. I'll probably be back on Tuesday night with the man, Larry Krueger. I think I will be streaming tomorrow as well. Obviously, Rob unfortunately got fired from Niners Nations. Poor decision on their part. We know how good Stats is, but he's launching his own YouTube channel, and I'm going to be going back on with him, obviously resuming our Monday show and helping that YouTube channel get off his feet and it's going to be really fun to do. Rob's awesome. And then I think I'll be back Tuesday night as usual with Larry Krueger. And then I'll kind of figure out what we're going to do for this offseason. I don't know if this channel is going to stay fully Niners. Maybe we'll talk a little bit Eagles, Chiefs. We'll start talking some more other teams. I'm not 100% sure. It just depends really on what you guys want to talk about. But I'm ready for anything and everything. I'm looking forward to attacking this offseason, and I really enjoyed going through this season with all of you. Unfortunately, it didn't end the way we wanted, but hey, that's why there's always next year, and this endless quest for the 49ers to win a Super Bowl continues. So I appreciate all of you. Have a great rest of your night, and hopefully we'll all recover from this one soon.